We're back. Thanks for sticking around. You're listening to Street Rod and Custom Radio. I'm your host, Brad Fanshaw, and I am here today. As I've told you before, we're in the heartland of America, Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm with Speedy Bill Smith, and he earned that name. We were talking about that earlier in the show because, you know what? Names like that are earned. They're not just handed out as you roll into the Nebraska line here. It's something that he's done through years of racing and innovation, and we are here at the museum, and you're going to see some photos of this on our website and on my Facebook page at Bondspeed Brad Fanshaw, and we're also going to have a bonus video for this episode. But when we were going away, we were talking about what built this company, what it takes to do that, and he was just about ready to tell us about a Ford auction that he attended. So, Bill, I'm going to go right back into it so you can tell us. I'm waiting to hear this one.
Well, the Ford Museum in Detroit had decided they had too much junk that had come from the Ford Motor Company.
Sounds like a sale I'd like to be at.
Yeah, well, opportunities seized and
Yes.
Opportunities missed. Most of the boys at the bar talk about other things that
Yes.
seized and missed. But I was at that 3-day sale and drove home with my wife, Joyce, in a 1.5 ton box truck that we had driven in anticipation of buying a few things, loaded so heavily that I drove 35 miles an hour from Detroit, Michigan to Lincoln, Nebraska.
That was a long trip back, wasn't it?
Long trip. But if I would have had a little accident or tire blew out or something, all of those engines and things that I had bought at the auction would have come forward and crushed me and my wife Joyce against the dash, and
that wouldn't have been good.
You wouldn't have been able to.
We wouldn't have this museum or anything.
So there was always challenges every day, but at the Ford Museum, you saw evidence of how they learned some of their things, and they had English cars there. They had French cars there. And you call it reverse engineering sometimes.
Yes.
But it gives the team or the crew or all the people that are working on projects, it triggers their interest.
It gives them something where they can, not everybody has one idea.
Right.
And so it's a melding of ideas, but they extrapolate it from pulling a car apart, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and you can't. Some people get it from a drawing, an engineering drawing. Some people get it from a model. Mm-hmm. Some people get it from a dream. There's ideas come from many different ways.
Well, speaking of dreams, and because we're going to run out of show because you've done so much that we can't fit it into this short. So
61 years, you can't fit in?
No, not and do it justice, okay? We could do it really fast, but that wouldn't be any good. Let's talk about the company because when you started out, you started out in a speed shop on O Street. Then you grew and you started doing the mail order. And I mean, when I look over there today, I mean, how many square feet is that building over there, your warehouse?
The configuration is 500,000, but in a warehouse that holds the type product that we have in there, it is over twice that because of the way that one of my sons happens to be a engineer for that. Mm-hmm. And so it has got a lot of ideas, and I think every day we sharpen the pencil and make it better. That's just the way the company has always worked.
And that's what makes a good company. You can't say, okay, here it is, now I'm going to go to my office and, play on the web or something like that. You got to keep doing that. But one of the things that I notice, that I've always noticed about the Speedway Motors catalog is there are, your competitors out there, but what I've noticed about yours is it seems to be really geared towards more the racer, the fabricator, the guy who's hands-on, because there's a lot of parts and pieces that aren't necessarily just, you open the box and bolt it on, but it's parts and pieces that can help me fabricate something else. Was that something that you really focused on?
In the early days, focused on those things because they weren't available. Only through one or two shops all across the country. You know, if you lived in Pennsylvania, if you lived in Portland, Oregon, or you weren't able to go and find that, period. You would spend a day or two or a week to find a clevis that was 5/8 with a 3/8 slot with a 3/8 bolt hole through it. And, you know, many of the parts at the time were war surplus from World War II that were developed then. So, you know, I manufactured, you know, we built 6,000 parts of our own right in this building.
6,000 parts. That's incredible.
Different parts.
And with this resurgence now of, you know, what everyone calls more traditional street rods, you know, rather than the super high tech, but going back to a little bit more traditional, do you think that has driven a lot of people to the Speedway Motors catalog?
Well, it progressed. In my early days, if I could get my car ready to go to the gas station on Friday night and display it to my buddies, I only had to go 6 blocks. And it didn't need to handle and stop and do all the things that street rods have to do today. A street rod today has to drive and handle and work better than their brand new car that they bought at 2014 for Mama to drive. Those cars have got to almost relate.
Well, because as
Not
you said,
in the look, but in the way they...
And that's a really good point, because you brought it up earlier in the show, that the car you used to drive every day was your race car on the weekend. Now these guys drive something that's all cushy and soft during the week, and then they want to jump in that and have it cushy and soft on the weekend.
Right.
Hey, we're talking to Speedy Bill Smith right here at Speedway Motors. I'm Brad Fanshaw. Don't go away, because we've got more right here as we wrap it up on this week's edition of Street Rod and Custom Radio. Thanks for sticking around. This is Street Rod and Custom Radio. I'm your host, Brad Fanshaw, and we are wrapping up a great show and a fantastic interview with Speedy Bill Smith right here at Speedway Motors. Don't forget, you can find them on that interweb thing at www.speedwaymotors.com. And we're filming today here at the museum. And this is the Museum of American Speed. And you can find them on the web at museumofamericanspeed.com. And one of the things that's so unique about this museum that you've built here is that when people go to your website, they're going to be able to find out that this is open to the public. It's guided tours, and it's a 2.5-hour tour. And there's a lot to see here. I mean, trust me, folks, when you come here, it's well worth your 2.5 hours, because when I walk in that door, the first thing that attracted me was, I have a love of Miller board track cars, because when you talk about innovation and things there, those Miller cars were it, and you've got that whole diorama up there. And when you put this museum together, when you said, okay, I've got all these cars sitting around and all your pedal cars, because you have your love of pedal cars, how do you just even start putting something like this down on paper that you're gonna build it? Because it has an atmosphere. It's not just lines of cars.
That is always challenging. This museum, the Museum of American Speed, has the largest collection of racing and exotic engines in the world. And that's not what I say. That's what all of the media who have come from France and Australia and all around the world, that's what they say as they tell their readership.
As their eyes pop out
Right.
when they see them, right?
Yeah. And there's well over 600 exotic engines on display, many of them one-offs, because the dream didn't become reality only first time. Some of them never finished. And this is through a period of over 100 years. not just the last 10 or 20 or et cetera, because, the Model T Ford came into existence in about 1907. And a lot of the innovations in the automotive world were just after the turn of the century in other companies. Many of them couldn't stand the Depression of the 30s, so Packard and some of the got very weak and had to go out of business later on. And all of these things that, Studebaker was probably, in my mind, as successful at Indianapolis, but never won with their cars or their engines, but had an awful lot of second places. And in life, nobody talked about who ran second.
Right.
If you're a racer, second is the first loser.
There you go.
And that's, in absorbing all this as a young man and going through the aging process and so forth, you learn a lot from doing, touching, etc.
And building that company that's sitting there across the street with that massive facility and all the products, that's also something that is ever growing, ever changing. Now you've got multiple catalogs that reach out to the different racer groups, different enthusiast groups. And I'll be the first to admit, I thought it was, hardcore racing and street rods and things like that. But nowadays you even reach out to the guys who are the muscle cars, because let's face it, the 69 Camaro is kind of like the 32 Ford of today, and for the guys that grew up kind of in my age group.
Well, all ages change, all interests change. But if you have the world of wheels in your head as a young person, it will probably stay there for a long time.
Well, I would say that the automotive world, the passion for cars and racing and collecting have kept you young at heart and kept you moving along, because I see them every year, and you're still got a grin on your face when you're rolling around talking to the people and seeing what's new there. And would you say that is something that's kept you very motivated? Well,
individuals keep you motivated. Because you can learn from everybody, good, bad, or indifferent. I've been privileged to know everybody in the performance business.
They told me they knew you.
No, I know them. The Mickey Thompsons, the Shelbys, Linda Vons, everybody in the performance business, because in the 50s and 60s, it was a very small nucleus of people all across the United States. It wasn't a big group like the SEMA show is today.
Right. It was a select group of people, and I'm sorry to say we're out of time.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, your stories keep going. I want to hear more. We will. I'll take you up on that. Thanks, everybody. We've been here at Speedway Motors in Lincoln, Nebraska. Bill, thanks so much for taking the time today and being on Street Rod and Custom Radio.
Well, it's fun to do, or I wouldn't have done it.
Thank you so much. Don't go away, because next week we'll have even more.